We're going to talk about network traffic and log file analysis, and primarily we're going to talk about this in context of really just kind of the benefits it can have to an investigation. To kind of go through actually performing log file analysis and really kind of in-depth network traffic analysis, there's like courses that are dedicated to that, right? So we could certainly spend more time than we're going to in this case, but we really want to kind of bring it up and kind of talk about it because it can be really, really beneficial to understanding what actually occurred and kind of setting the foundation for your investigation to kind of give you a kind of an idea of what might have occurred and how an attack or how an infection may have unfolded. So some of the investigative benefits that you'll get out of looking at log file analysis or network traffic is that you could get things like machines that were remotely connected to your victim machine or to your suspect machine, kind of the connections that were taking place from it. You can get things like the dropped malware or exfiltrated data, so data that they may have stolen, such as credit cards and so on and so forth. You can get information on network probing or scanning activity, which can give you information out about how they may, systems that were basically kind of targeting or attacking that system. You can get things like SQL injections and other types of attacks, cross-site scripting attacks and things like that. It's also beneficial because it can give you historical information. So logs, will be over the course of a period of time, right? Could be months or years, which you have logs for, and that will give you kind of previous state information, right? Kind of post you actually responding to the system, it'll give you kind of the events that led up to the attack. And why you're there to begin with. We talked about flow data, which will give you things like statistics and things like that, and give you a better understanding of the environment you're dealing with. And then kind of the last bit there, which is really kind of the most important, and then a lot of the cases when you're dealing with kind of intrusion investigations, is you're really interested in the next hop, right? Where did they come from? Where is the next link in the chain, basically? So that's what you're basically going to be looking for. You're looking for who they were and kind of where did they come from closest to me or to our victim. Looking at network logs, right, you can get, kind of some of the information that you should look for is kind of dependent on the log itself. You're going to look at things like the target IP address and the suspect IP address. Those are things that you're going to have to try to know ahead of time, but you're going to kind of be able to figure out by looking at the logs, kind of getting some sort of information out about them, kind of as you parse through them. You may be able to find information about how the suspect got in, right? Not always, but sometimes it can give you indication in there. You can give you information about other computers that may have been involved or kind of network indicators that you'll want to set up to help secure your network and things like that. It's important that you understand the log file format. Every log file is going to be slightly different, right, in the sense that depends on the options that the administrators put in place, as well as the format or the program that the log is associated with. You can also, one of the kind of the big things here is that you're going to try to basically be looking for anomalies, right? And this is kind of a difficult step to come up with, right? Because you need to, in order to identify an anomaly, you need to know what's normal, right? In a lot of cases, that may not be possible. Or maybe not possible. That's a bad example. It may be more difficult than you would think. So this kind of is kind of easier said than done. But you may have to work with staff or somebody like that to kind of understand what is normal traffic, so that you can better understand anomalies. There is some activity that is anomalous regardless of what it is, right? Scans, SQL injections, things like that, or attempts at both are basically bad, right? They're really not necessarily were they successful, but they are something that is an anomaly. And eventually this may give us some information about filtering for keywords and stuff like that we can use later on in our other analysis. So network logs basically give us a timeline. Events in a log occur sequentially, right? So they will give us kind of this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. So they can allow us to correlate events and events that were conducted by the attacker. They'll also give us some, indication of scanning activity. The way that we can kind of tell some of the scans or scanning activity is by rapid events. because typically the scans are going to be automated in some fashion. So kind of, multiple events coming from an IP address, every second is, kind of in kind of building order, right? Like, we have this command, then we add a value onto it and kind of do an escalated approach. That can give you some good indicators of scanning activity that's taking place. Again, we're going to basically be looking for anomalies like scanning activity and kind of build from there, based on the things that we identify. And then eventually we're going to want to correlate this with the disk timeline, which we'll talk about on the second or third day. We'll talk about actually the second day, creating a timeline. And we can kind of use the times that are associated with that to kind of correlate that between activity in different areas. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that you can't always trust the reliability of logs. I mean, they are just text files, so they can be edited, they can be manipulated. It's something to kind of keep aware of. Attackers can delete them, so always kind of be aware of that. Here are some kind of some log file analysis tools that are available. They all kind of do different things. They all have different specialties that will give you information out about the logs and their associated content. So you need to kind of determine, what's your best tool. There are gobs of other ones, right? This is by no means like a fully inclusive list, but there are a lot of stuff that's out there. Here are just some examples that you can kind of look at. So then we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, dealing with packet header information or full content. When you're dealing with a packet capture or PCAP, this is like data that can be incredibly beneficial to your investigation, but is very rare, right? Typically, organizations don't keep it. Getting a full wiretap is difficult to do, and it happens in rare cases. But it can be really beneficial because it gives you basically everything that occurred over that network. And it really can be used to give you the full picture. It can give you the information out about the actual traffic that was being conducted by the attacker, the data that they were taking, and so on and so forth, the tools that they dropped, things like that. But what is much more common is kind of the net flow or pen register data, the flow data, which will give you kind of historical records of network traffic. One of the things that's important to note is that in those that type of traffic or this type of data is that ISPs, hosting facilities, and everything like that, they will have this data, and the reason why is because they use that to charge their customers, right? So they may not have they may do a sampling, right? Something like they sample every 10 packets or something like that, but they will have this data to some extent. Right? And the reason is because they need it to charge their customers, right? So it's there for a reason. So it's important to kind of, that this is something that if you're going on site, it doesn't hurt to ask for, and most organizations will have it to some extent, right? And most companies will have it to some extent, ISPs or service providers, hosting facilities, and so on and so forth. The one thing is that this is partial content. It'll, it basically is sampling the header information and doing statistical analysis based off of that. Flow data is, pen registers are just the flat packet header content. And again, it can give you additional information about what was going in and out, the quantity of data that was going to an IP address or something like that, which can be really helpful to kind of understanding what a computer may have been involved with or how it may have been used. So again, kind of statistical analysis, there's a number of different tools. Flow data is the most common, right, which is basically statistical analysis in itself. It'll basically give you more general information on activity, but sometimes the general information can be really valuable, right? It can tell you that this IP address, had a lot of data going to it, right? And we just had a lot of data stolen from our network. We may want to go look at that IP address. Those type of things, right? We have a lot of communications beaconing out to this IP address, right? That is, in some cases, is evidence enough to take your investigation forward. And really the big thing is that you're trying to find the next hop, right? You're trying to use this information to see where was data going, where was the malware calling back to, or something along those lines. Because your investigation doesn't end on your local system, right? Or it may not end, right? I mean, I guess if you've kind of, if it's an internal thing and you just want to, kind of kibosh it, and you've done that, then that's your choice. But ultimately, in most kind of criminal investigations and in a lot of civil investigations as well, you'll want to find out where was the data going to, and log data will be able to give you that. It'll also tell you kind of the ports that were used, which can give you information about the applications that may have been compromised or used as part of the compromise. And in a lot of ways, it is more manageable than full content. Full content is a huge amount of data, right, quantity-wise. Think about just the quantity of data that goes through CERT every day, right? And CERT's not even a really big group, right, in the grand scheme of things, but there's going to be a lot of data that goes through.